I never thought Thanksgiving could turn into a full-blown battle, but here I am sitting in my kitchen replaying every conversation in my head, wondering how it all got so messy. Let me start by introducing myself. I'm Sarah, a mom of 4 beautiful, lively kids, one of whom has a fragile immune system. I love hosting family gatherings, always have. But this year was different. It all started about a week and a half ago. My nephew had been diagnosed with hand, foot, and mouth disease. For those who don't know, it's not just a little bug, it's brutal. My sister, her husband, and their little boy live with my parents, so naturally they caught it too. It was inevitable. But this is where things began to spiral. Initially, Thanksgiving was supposed to be at my parents' house. But because they were all sick, someone decided it would be better if we moved it to my home instead. My house is my sanctuary, my space where my kids are safe. And yet, suddenly, it felt like my safe space was under siege. I told my mom that I couldn't have them over while they were still contagious. I tried to explain the simple facts. My 3 older kids were extremely sensitive the last time anyone in the house had HFM. Blisters, peeling skin, bleeding, weeks of misery that I wouldn't wish on anyone. My youngest is still so little, and one sniffle or tiny germ could land him in the hospital. But my mom insisted. She said they'd glove up and sit at a separate table. And yet, their 2-year-old son would have free reign of my home. That tiny boy, adorable as he is, still puts everything in his mouth. Chairs, toys, floorboards, anything within reach. I couldn't let that happen. Not to my kids. Not in my house. I asked my mom a simple question. If you're so set on coming here for Thanksgiving, why not have it at your own house? Her answer stunned me, because then we'd have to sanitize everything. And that was the moment I realized just how selfish this situation had become. They weren't willing to take precautions in their own home, but they expected me to put my children at risk for the sake of convenience. I told my mom exactly what I thought. They were being selfish and I would not allow them in my home while they were contagious. And that's when it happened. She started crying. She told me she wouldn't have this conversation with me and hung up. After that call, I was left sitting at my kitchen table, feeling a mix of frustration, worry, and exhaustion. I kept replaying every word, every moment, trying to make sense of it. On one hand, it was Thanksgiving, a time that's supposed to be filled with gratitude and warmth. On the other hand, I had 4 kids depending on me to keep them safe. I couldn't compromise that. I knew I had to think strategically. My husband and I had some legal matters that my parents were generously helping us with. They were giving us a gift that could relieve a huge burden, something that would make our lives so much easier. But I also knew my family, especially my mom, could be very manipulative when it came to family decisions. If I said no, even reasonably, she might withhold the gift. I didn't want to jeopardize that. So I made a plan. I decided that my home would be off limits to my sister and her family, but I would still allow my parents to come. That way my kids were safe, Thanksgiving could happen in some form, and the relationship with my parents wouldn't be completely damaged. I texted my dad and tried to calmly explain the situation, hoping he would understand my perspective. At the same time, my mind raced with the memories of the last time hand, foot, and mouth disease hit my house. My 3 older kids were out of school for weeks. The blisters, the peeling skin, the crying, it was traumatic. I couldn't go through that again. And I knew deep down that my sister didn't fully understand the risks. She probably thought her precautions, gloves, separate table, were enough. But they weren't. Not with a toddler roaming around, touching everything, putting tiny hands in his mouth. Finally, I reached out to my dad directly. I explained everything calmly, step by step, trying to convey the urgency without making it seem like I was attacking my sister. I told him the facts about how contagious HFM is, how badly my kids had reacted before, and why even gloves and a separate table wouldn't protect them. I also reassured him that I still wanted Thanksgiving to happen, just without my sister and her family present. A day later, my sister called. I could tell immediately from her tone that she was defensive, maybe even a little angry. She insisted that everything would be fine, that she and her husband had taken precautions, and that her little boy would be on his best behavior. I listened, trying to remain calm, but inside my anxiety was climbing. I could already see the chaos in my mind, the toddler crawling across my living room, grabbing toys, touching surfaces, putting tiny hands in his mouth. I tried to explain again in the calmest way I could muster, that no precautions they could take would keep my kids safe. Gloves, separate tables, even constant supervision from both parents. It wasn't enough. My youngest could still get exposed. My 3 older children could flare up again with blisters and skin peeling. I didn't need to justify my concerns. I only needed to make them understand that my priority was my children's health, above all else. My sister didn't like that answer. Her voice grew louder. She accused me of being unreasonable, of overreacting, and of making the holiday about control rather than family. I took a deep breath and reminded myself not to get drawn into the emotional storm. I had to stay firm. My home, my rules. My children, my responsibility. Then my dad stepped in. He listened to my concerns without interruption, and for the first time in weeks I felt like I had an ally. I explained to him once more why my sister and her family couldn't come, and this time I emphasized the risks. Not just minor risks, but real, serious consequences if my children got sick. I could hear him nodding through the phone, and finally he said something that eased the tension in my chest. "I'll talk to your mom and sister. I've got your back on this." Relief washed over me. It wasn't just about protecting my kids anymore. It was also about validating my instincts, trusting my judgment, and standing up for what I knew was right. Thanksgiving could still happen, but on my terms. And it would be safe for my family. A few hours later, I got the final confirmation. My sister, her husband, and their son would not be coming. My dad had spoken to everyone, and the matter was resolved without any confrontation in my house. I could finally breathe. My children were safe, the holiday could continue, and I had learned an important lesson in setting boundaries and standing firm, even when emotions run high. Thanksgiving morning arrived, and I felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. The house smelled of turkey roasting, cinnamon, and pumpkin pie, classic scents that made my home feel warm and inviting. My kids were laughing in the kitchen, helping set the table, and for the first time in days, I could see the excitement of a holiday without stress clouding the air. As I moved around the kitchen, putting finishing touches on the meal, I reflected on everything that had happened over the past couple of weeks. The arguments, the phone calls, the endless back and forth. It had been exhausting. But now, seeing my children safe, happy, and healthy, I realized it had all been worth it. I had stood my ground when it mattered most. The doorbell rang and my parents arrived, carrying sides and desserts to add to the feast. Their smiles were warm, and I could see that they understood the tension had been necessary. They helped me arrange the food on the table, and we shared stories and laughter as the house filled with the comforting buzz of family togetherness. It wasn't the Thanksgiving I had imagined at first. No extended family, no chaotic toddler roaming freely, but it was perfect in its own way. Throughout the day, I noticed how much lighter everything felt. There was no underlying tension or fear of germs, no hidden worries about whether someone would get sick. Instead, there was gratitude, love, and a quiet pride in knowing that I had made the right choice. My children could enjoy the holidays safely, and my parents were still able to participate and share in the celebration. As the day wound down, I found myself sitting quietly in the living room, listening to my kids playing and my parents chatting softly in the kitchen. The tension that had haunted me for weeks was gone, replaced with a sense of calm and accomplishment. I realized that setting boundaries isn't about being difficult or selfish. It's about protecting what truly matters. I thought back to all the phone calls, the tears, the defensiveness, and even the guilt I had felt. It wasn't easy to stand firm, especially when family pressures were high and emotions ran deep. But in the end, it made all the difference. My children had a safe environment to enjoy the holiday. I had preserved the peace in my home. And more importantly, I had done what any parent should do. I prioritized the health and well-being of my family above all else. Looking back now, I can see the lesson clearly. Family can sometimes be complicated, and traditions can become stressful when boundaries aren't respected. But this Thanksgiving taught me that it's okay to say no even to the people you love. It's okay to put the safety and well-being of your children first. And it's okay to stand firm even when it feels uncomfortable. The moral of this story is simple. Protecting your loved ones is always worth the hard conversations, the tough decisions, and the emotional strain. Boundaries are not a sign of weakness. They're a sign of strength, responsibility, and love. And sometimes, that strength is exactly what keeps your family safe and healthy. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to our channel. We share real Reddit stories about family, revenge, and the drama that comes with them. Stories that will shock you, inspire you, and remind you of the importance of standing your ground when it matters most.